in South Africa this week, it's quite a interesting week. We are going to be voting on Wednesday.
Yes, we are.
And to be honest, I haven't voted for years. But I can, basically because I lost interest or whatever. But I'm going to be voting on Wednesday. And I looked at what each party,
Stands for.
yeah, that they actually stand for. And our leading party at the moment stands for nothing. Godless, don't stand for the family, for children, for economic growth,
Yeah.
for job creation, nothing. So then it begs the question in my mind, what is your moral fiber? Where are your morals? What kind of a person are you if you don't care? And and it's been quite interesting learning about all the different parties. Yeah, so anybody got something to add?
Yeah, I would just say, there's almost too many parties,
Yes.
I think, in South Africa, and I think that it's obviously clearly by design. There's a reason why there are the amount of parties that there are, not in the US or UK, for instance, where they've got a two-state, well, not a two-state,
It's two-party.
Two-party program, two-party infrastructure. And I think, it's clearly by design. And coming from South Africa as well, I see that it's been carrying on for so long in the names of wanting to curb the quote-unquote atrocities of apartheid that people have become accustomed to and acclimatized to this whole idea of let's go ahead and stick with what we have because we're afraid of attempting to try something new because it's rather the devil you know than the devil you don't.
Of course.
And at the moment I can see, and I think a lot of people can see, that it's clearly not working. The current regime, it's been in a slow death spiral for a couple of decades now, and it isn't getting any better. Nobody's prospering as well as all the promises say that we should. And I think if nothing changes, nothing will change.
Yeah.
And this is why we felt the importance of
Having this topic today,
considering in a couple of days' time it's going to be elections again, and it's up to the country once again to decide.
Yeah, and it's like, particularly in South Africa, there's this mindset that God puts leaders in power.
A very big misunderstanding, yes.
Yeah, just automatically I get heated over that. If God did, then what? Why go vote? Why even choose a leader? And God, who happens to be good, would God put somebody evil in power?
No, of course not.
As we know from the book of James, that God, is not tempted by evil. So I wish that people would get the right understanding of that. Because this was brought up a couple of months ago at the church I was attending. And when the pastor said that, I don't know, I just lost a lot of respect for him. And yeah, it just comes across as like a very, very simple, easy excuse. Well, there's nothing I can do because God
Is in control.
is
Yeah.
to blame for the actual suffering that I am now going through.
Yeah.
We have a brain, and we actually need to actually judge, to discern which party happens to be the best for, the country.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, that's lovely. Thank you for having me on your channel. It's really an honor to be here.
Finally.
I've seen your content and everything like that, and I'm very excited to be here.
Can you just talk a bit louder, Kwanda?
Okay.
I'm worried about the actual space.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I was just saying thank you for letting me be on the channel today and letting me be here.
Always welcome.
And when you told me about the topic of this discussion, I think a lot of the viewers, from seeing your previous content and everything like that, is very interested to see the different perspectives that we actually have with regards to elections. Because we come from different backgrounds, different understandings. And there's a lot of material that's out there that might not or might be prominent towards Christian living or Christian life. And there's a lot of things that can be against the Christian life. And as a Christian and as a different person that might be not a Christian, kind of ideas, because as a Christian, you look at the facts based on biblical scripture. As a non-Christian, maybe you look at the facts based on political scripture and political doctrines.
Sure.
So it'd be lovely to have this conversation about this and actually help some people who could be also myself to discuss that. Where do I fit in? What do I believe? Where's my moral compass in order for me to discern which party am I going with? So I think this is going to help a lot of our viewers and our audience to be able to kind of get their footing and their background and to know that this is my background, this is where I'm going, this is where I'm moving towards in terms of the country, in terms of my Christian faith, and who should I go with or which organization would best represent my beliefs.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
yeah.
So in light of that, I would just like to turn to something that everybody can relate to, regardless of whether you're Christian or not. Everybody would understand this, because you can see it just on its head in terms of society and in terms of...
So in terms of that, are you looking at it from a biblical or scriptural background?
I'm gonna read it from a biblical background, and then we can clearly see it just in our day-to-day lives. So in Proverbs 29 verse 2, it reads, "When the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. But when the wicked bear rule, the people mourn." So, this is basically attempting to say, when there's people in government that are in authority, have a concern for the citizens of a country.
Yes.
When they're concerned and they care about and they want to do good for the sake of their people that are in the country.
Yes.
Society generally thrives.
Yes.
When people are concerned about their own self-interest and concerned about their friends or concerned about the few people within their life that they care about only,
Yes.
generally it doesn't work out too well for the rest of the country.
Okay.
The rest of the citizens, they're concerned merely with just making ends meet for themselves and living a standard of living that doesn't necessarily need to be lived.
Yeah.
And so what happens is they end up taking more than they should
Okay.
and not doing that which is right for the position that they hold.
No, of course.
And so, that's just scripture, but even though it's scripture, you can see it with your eyes and you can hear it with your ears when you just go ahead and look at society.
Yeah.
When there's good rulers, generally things work out pretty well for society. When there's bad rulers, generally things don't work out too well for the citizens.
Yeah, and it's that this whole thing has been turned upside down. The people put those people in power. Those people owe us.
That's right. They have an obligation to their citizens.
Yes,
Yeah, of course.
Yes,
Of
yeah.
course.
Yeah.
And when the people realize how much power they are to have, you can just rise up and take them out.
That's right. Yeah.
Yes, some people might lose like their lives, but
It wouldn't be the first time throughout history,
yeah, it won't be the first and it won't be like the last.
Yeah.
And why do we, as Christians, sit back and think we'll just pray? Yes, I'm not saying don't pray, but do something.
That's right. That's right.
No, of course.
Like in Luke, what's it? Luke 22, verse 36. Buy a sword.
Yeah.
I mean, Jesus told them to buy a sword. What for? To go and self-defense.
Yeah. Not for buttering bread or anything. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
or for they're going to go and fish and you're taking off the scales.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is for a reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, so interesting to note that the party that we have now in power doesn't stand for anything. Nothing.
Well, they stand for, let's rephrase, they stand for
It's
things.
something that they do stand from, but from your perspective, it's not in line with the better good for the
Yeah,
whole.
Yeah.
it only
Is that what you...
pays them
Okay.
Only
as
benefits them.
long as they are in power.
That's right. Yeah.
It's going to actually pay them.
Yeah. And I think, Kwanda, you can probably talk possibly more into this with, you can correct if I'm wrong, but I think it's in South Africa we've got quite a diverse culture set here,
Of course.
with different beliefs, different cultures.
Yeah.
Would you say that a lot of the cultures, a lot of the factors that determine people voting are based on a cultural aspect of these are my people, and irrespective of whether they're right or wrong, they are my people.
Yeah. I think from an understanding perspective of the different cultures, I've seen different cultures. I've gone through the whole of South Africa, I'll even say Southern Africa. You see different cultures, you experience different kind of ethnic groups within that. And why I enjoy or why I appreciate the scriptures that you read, that regardless of if you believe in the Bible or you don't, that still stands because you're voting for someone that will be able to have your best interests at heart and that wants you to prosper in whatever endeavors that you have. Of course, there are rules and regulations and obligations towards prospering. I won't really get into that because, like I was saying at the beginning of the talk, that some people are for the Christian Bible and Scripture and some people are against. But like I'm saying, for the passage, the specific passage that you read, that is in the interest of everyone's heart, regardless. Which is something that we really need to look at a broad level when casting your vote. Because everyone votes does count. I know there are instances where people say that no, you know what, votes get thrown away and whatnot.
It's that like it's rigged.
Like it's rigged, basically. But at the end of the day, you're still going out there, you're still putting your efforts. Like we're saying, let's not sit back and pray. What actually we're going to do ourselves. And this week we have the opportunity to go and actually put a vote towards a certain party. Whether it reaches front or it doesn't reach back, we have no control over that. But what are we doing that we do have control over?
True.
So that is very, that's a powerful scripture and that's a powerful message for anyone that's listening to this, this discussion, and everyone that's going to actually make the decision to say, let me go forward and let me do something. Because also sitting back and saying that, you know what, I'm not going to vote. And I also do agree with what you're saying, that a lot of the times I used to look at, will voting really assist me in anything?
Like change
Will it change anything? Or am I just basically doing something as a formality without getting the repercussions or without getting
all the benefits or whatever is going to come from it?
And I believe exactly that it does, because at the end of the day, you're still putting your efforts towards something. And that will yield results, whether you might think it's true or not, but it does remain.
It does matter.
A couple of years ago, when I went on a mission trip, we were sent into a squatter camp, and as being a middle-aged white South African, what I saw there was beyond horrendous. Raw sewage, kids playing in the dirt. I mean, how long are those kids going to actually survive there?
That's
with
right.
all that sickness going around. We actually went to, I can't remember how many shacks, and it's like the people there are still waiting for free housing, schooling, medical aid, free everything. 10% of the country cannot help carry 90%.
That's true. That is very true.
Of the country.
And it's I think it's a shame that empty promises were made to begin with.
Yes.
So the empty promises that were made to begin with are an indictment on the people that made those promises. But now the thing is, there has to come a point in time where you realize that the indictment shifts from them who made the promises to the people that are still waiting for those promises to be kept. Because eventually you have to come to the realization that those were empty words and those promises are never going to be fulfilled. And you have to come to the realization in and of yourself, waiting to fulfill those promises or waiting for those promises to be fulfilled. That time duration while you're waiting is slowly eroding your life away, and the years of your life are getting incrementally worse and worse and worse because nothing is getting provided, nothing is getting benefited to your life. And it doesn't make any sense for you to continually back a horse that simply is never going to win and is never going to go ahead and be able to fulfill the words that they gave to you.
I'm also thinking from our audience perspective, and as well to think that because of my traveling and a lot of different ethnic and cultural groups that I've been in, a lot of people have told me that they're in the mindset that the ones that are currently promising or making these promises or whatever the case may be, that they're not the ones to blame for how society has turned out. That it's something that actually happened before the ones in power, and maybe even people that were in previous power that have actually unfolded something that was destined for the current ruling power to not succeed. So they were basically playing into a field where they couldn't or they didn't have the means to be able to prosper the people because they were previously disadvantaged.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking on myself that for a person that's sitting there in the audience, thinking to myself that no, it's not the current people in power, it's not the current people that are casting the votes. This happened a whole while back and it's only manifesting now.
Yeah.
Because it had to actually take time to evolve into what's happening.
Yeah, so I mean, 100%, yeah, I suppose that, yeah, that's a valid question. A lot of people could be thinking that.
Yeah,
and it's also, we must also remember, though, that pre-1994, you know, there's our currency was 1-to-1 on the pound. We were somewhat stronger than the dollar back in the day. Our military was one that should actually be and was actually feared as a superpower or up-and-coming superpower. In all intents and purposes, South Africa was on the up and up. Post-1994, this was when obviously apartheid ended and the new regime came in. After that, see, this is the thing where you always have to factor in time.
Yes.
There's been time that they've been allowed to gather their faculties, gather their intelligence, gather what needs to be done in order to take the establishment that was prospering and to take it to new heights and to make it better.
Of course.
Ideally, that's what you want in a government. That's what you want in people that are going to be ruling you. You want to go from one level to, ideally, a better level, not a worse one. So, in that frame of mind, the very fact that we were right on benchmark in terms of the global stage, we were there, you can see it getting incrementally worse. So if it's getting incrementally worse from when it was better, you must clearly see that what was handed over was already good to begin with. There was something that was very strong, very productive. Sure, things could have been done maybe a little bit better, but for all intents and purposes, you'll never reach perfection on Earth. It was better than what it is now. So if it was better back then, clearly it means that it's gotten worse now, and you can't hold the old regime to the failures of the current regime based on the fact that, simply for the fact that it was better then. We were stronger then. You can't hold the old regime responsible for the failures of what you've decided to do as a government now. And that's where I think that's a bit of a lapse of judgment when it comes to people that still want to criticize something that was, what, almost 30 years now?
And like...
Exactly 30 years,
We've got too many bureaucracy and red tape.
There is a lot of that.
And the best is having a very small government and free market.
100%. It's quite a willing formula. It's been tried and tested in history, yes.
Like, I mean, I can still recall the first things that I noticed were parks. The parks were maintained. The parks just started getting neglected. The grass was knee-high and everything, you know. And that as time has actually progressed, the more homeless people have, like, you know, just really exploded. more people begging, more people having babies out of wedlock. And that just honestly teaches young men, do not be held accountable,
Yeah.
responsible.
And I was just about to bring up this whole idea of, the very fact that you have a lack of accountability, and yet you're instilling a whole idea of, within your citizens, you've got rights that can abdicate your accountability.
Yeah.
It just goes to show this whole issue of you can basically get away with whatever you choose to do.
Yeah.
And you can get rewarded for getting away with it. It just goes to show the level of corruption, the level of failure of management that starts from the top, starts from the people in power. If they've got that ideology, how that trickles down to civilians and citizens to go ahead and say, this is how we do it, emulate us.
Yeah.
But they're in the positions of power. That doesn't work for your average Joe on the street, because they're not in a position of power at all. So it's never going to work for them.
Yeah.
I'm also just thinking that, with our discussion that we're going forth with, is that a lot of people might say that, it's relative. How do you know, maybe from your perspective, that things might be better? Or maybe from your perspective, they feel that it's better now than it was back then, before the different regime obviously went into power. But I think something that we can't argue with is the fact that the pound and the rand were sitting par to one another.
Yeah.
These are facts that, regardless of where I stand or where you stand, these are facts.
Yeah.
You mentioned on the parks.
Yes.
This is something that we can actually see.
Yes.
And I mean, everyone is welcome to go do the investigation on themselves.
Yes.
I mean, it doesn't have to be a biased or prejudiced standpoint that we're coming from.
Yeah.
But I mean, go do the investigation and see that are these factual things that we're talking about or not.
Yeah.
And we can use that based on, it's not relative to me, is it better or is it worse?
Yeah.
But here are the facts. Were job opportunities the same back then versus they are now?
Yeah.
And I think that's something that everyone can take out for themselves. I mean, if you're going to cast a vote, I think you can just take the time to go do the research and see that, are things better now, or are things the same, or are things even worse?
Yeah.
And then make that own choice in yourself to say that this is what I'm going to move forward to, because this platform has actually sparked that idea in my head to say, it doesn't matter what we say or what they say or what he says.
Yeah.
It's about what are the facts and where we're moving forward with these facts and where am I going to cast my vote with regards to exactly what research I did for myself and what resonates with me.
Yeah.
And that's why go and speak to people who happen to be older.
Yeah.
Don't speak to your friends because they don't know much.
Yeah.
Go to older people, ask them. And it's like the other day, you've got countless young men that have gone to college, varsity, whatever, and they can't find a job.
Yeah.
And now they want to get paid 4,000 rand a month. For what? It's not the 10% responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yes, I understand things have changed since the 1980s with the whole computer age and all that. I do understand that.
Yeah.
But it's not the 10% responsibility.
But also, and then bringing up the 10%, okay, let's go ahead and say, the 10%, the most rich and powerful in society. If you've got the 10% that are beholden to the 1%, which is your government and your bureaucrats, and your government and your bureaucrats have the idea of everything must be regulated. So that means if everything must be regulated through the government in order for business to thrive, you're already setting the people up within the 10% at a massive disadvantage, because the people in the 10% are concerned about a thing that they should be concerned about, which is money and economic growth.
Yes, yes.
Those are the people that are supposed to be opening up businesses, are supposed to be pushing forth within industry and pushing forth with growth of the economy. If you're stifling those people in order to limit them to, you have to go through certain channels, you have to file out forms and procedures and wait for months and months and months for your business to get off the ground, and it has to go through the right channels in order for it to get off the ground, you're not only inhibiting the 10%, which don't necessarily need the money straight away, but you're inhibiting the jobs that those 10% would create through their companies for the people that really, really do need the money straight away.
Yes.
So it's always, it's not the rich that are the problem. It's the government and the 1% above the 10% that is the problem, that is inhibiting those 10% from creating jobs, which will then go ahead and factor into the lives prospering of those that are under the 10%. And that's something that people, only just recently have I sort of started to change my mindset about that. A couple of years ago I was definitely all into this whole thing, the rich people are the problem. It's a small deceived percentage of rich people that are a problem. Generally, rich people are concerned about self-interest and concerned about making more money. Making more money by default means employing more people. Employing more people starts benefiting normal average Joes, and that bolsters the economy to where you want it to be. But if you've got red tape dictated to by people above the 10% of the rich people, then it becomes a problem not just for the 10%, and also not just then for the people who don't have jobs who really need it, but more fundamentally it becomes a big problem on a global stage where you stop having stakeholders and shareholders and investors from other countries wanting to come in, because then your country starts looking a little bit less attractive to the global audience, and they're like, why should we go ahead and invest in a country that isn't thriving, and the amount of red tape continually inhibits the country from thriving.
And also what really causes so much damage is when the people riot. You destroy companies.
Yes.
And those companies actually offering jobs. They are basically feeding you. They are feeding their families. It's customers. It is
the economy as a whole.
Yes.
Yeah.
And just because you can't use speech, you go to violence.
That's right.
I mean, learn to actually use speech. To actually communicate your frustration or something. It doesn't help to actually destroy shopping malls.
No, definitely not. Yeah, definitely not. Because you can be damn sure that media is going to go ahead and publicize that on YouTubes and all the platforms, and it's going to make your country look terrible.
I think that's actually a lovely point that you're actually discussing, Alice. And I think a lot of the people will actually say that can be for their own circumstances or whatever, that some of the things that we're talking about can be relative to their situation. Whereas, or I'm trying to say is that a lot of people can say that since the new regime has come in, they've been fruitful, they've been benefiting. I mean, some of the people from the different cultures that I've been to. Some of the people were maybe living in a township or whatever the case may be. Now they live in a suburban area. Now they're driving fancy German cars that they wouldn't be able to afford previously and things like that.
Sure.
And I think the most important thing that we've actually established in this whole discussion is that look at the facts. Because even though you might be driving a better car, what about your future? What about your education? What about your way of living? What about the gap between the affluent and the less affluent, or the struggling?
Yeah.
You did mention that you went to a township area.
Yeah, yes.
And a lot of people are saying that when they stayed in the townships, and obviously this is an older generation, we're not looking at our friends or anything like that. They were saying they staying in the townships used to be clean. It used to be safe. It used to be a place that someone could be proud of. Whereas now, that
it's horrendous. It's
there's a lot of
absolutely
garbage. There's a lot of people living illegally in certain
horrendous.
places.
Yes.
There's not sewage systems that accommodates people. Because funny enough, I was actually in KZN just last week, and I was looking at the structures that they built in the township. And I think to myself, as a child, I used to go to the same place, and the same structures that were built back then are still standing, and people are still living in their homes and still renovating. Whereas you find big construction groups that will build something, and within 10 years, it's faulty, or it's not actually standing the way it used to. And then the whole project has to start again now to redo what was supposed to have been done in the first instance.
Which costs more money.
Which costs money, which is on the pocket of who? The taxpayers.
Yeah.
Which goes back to the fact that is that scripture that you wrote, or the statement, I'll say for people that might not say that, it's scripture or this and that, but that statement still stands, regardless if you look at it as scripture or if you look at it as something that people should actually consider before casting a vote.
Yeah.
And because these things have happened, and just from my personal experience, I'm not saying, everyone's got their own experience and things like that, and everyone's got their own narrative to how things have gone in the past 30, 40, 50 years. But there's some things that are factual that regardless of how I see it, regardless of how you see it, is it really for the better, or is it actually putting us down in a deep hole?
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right.
And that to actually get past this thing of always blaming the past.
Yeah.
Are you going to be a total captive victim your whole life? It is your life.
Yeah.
Choose.
Yeah.
Yes, the old South Africa wasn't perfect. But whatever the white man had, and I'm not talking about fancy cars and this and this and this, but if under the old South Africa they built a soccer field in the township, they would go and actually build one there as well.
Yeah.
And houses were built,
Yeah.
paid by the white people,
Yeah.
taxes.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's, we were talking about it just this week. It just gets brought to my remembrance. It's unfortunate that South Africa is the head of the spear regarding this one thing. We are ahead of the curve regarding this one thing, and it's not a good thing to be ahead of the curve of, but unfortunately we are ahead of the curve regarding a country that is in decline.
Yeah.
It's a sad thing that the rest of the world is starting to catch up to it
us,
now.
Yeah.
You see the rest of the world, civilizations and countries that you thought would never start having the things that they're starting to have. They're starting to have them.
Yes, yeah.
America is starting to have power cuts.
Yeah.
Illegal aliens are flooding into
Potholes.
the UK and Europe, and it's a sad thing to be the forerunner of But unfortunately, to, you know, the international audience, this is what it looks like.
Yeah.
When you start condoning corrupt bureaucrats and corrupt government officials. Take a good look at South Africa, because this is what it looks like, and this is not what you want. And it's, if we continue down this road, give it 10, 20 years,
If
America and the UK
Yeah.
are going to follow. And it's going to get worse.
Yeah.
And it's all fine and well to say, we'll pray. It's all fine and well to say, well, you know, God puts government officials in power. It's all fine and well to say all these things that sound good on paper, and for the sake of being, you know, unbiased and looking at it objectively, the objective thing is to put aside, which I've had to do and we've all had to do, put aside your preconceptions and put aside your religion, which this isn't, but you've got a religion as an atheist, which you don't realize, but put aside your lenses and just look at things objectively. Are they good, the same, or are they getting worse? And these things we have to address, because if it's getting worse, it needs to be sorted out.
Exactly.
And also, what is a vitally important point, if your leadership of the country is friends with riff-raff places in the world,
Correct.
what is that saying? Birds of a feather flock together. If you're going to have people in power and they are friends with Muslim countries, China, Russia, raise an eyebrow. Because right now there are very, very few places, leaders that are sound.
Yeah.
El Salvador,
Argentina.
to Argentina,
Correct.
Holland.
Yeah.
They are the only ones, I think.
Yeah.
As for all the others, they sold out their people.
Sure.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate because it's generally the people that are in power that will never feel the brunt of their decisions.
Yeah, never.
It's always, unfortunately, the little man that's going to feel it first.
Yeah.
And these people stay in their high castles, oblivious to the actual qualms and the actual issues that are facing the normal man. Yet, they're the first ones to say, if you don't pay taxes,
Something gonna happen.
you're gonna get it. And it's just, you pick the horse that's more likely to win. That's what any logical person does, you know. And it's, again, it's got nothing to do with religion. It's got nothing to do with aspects of some far out ideology. But the thing is, we have to come to the realization that we all have an ideology, but for the sake of wanting a prosperous society, put aside your ideology and look at it just objectively. Just for the sake of objectivity and for the sake of your family and for the sake of your family's future. Which horse is more likely to win?
Yeah.
No, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. I'm very glad.
And it's like, choose a party that is for the people, not for themselves. Because I know year after year, I mean, every 4 years or whatever it is, there's this huge gathering and the voters get a t-shirt and a cap. What has that helped? Has that changed your life?
Besides you having a t-shirt and a cap extra? No,
Yeah.
not really.
Yeah. I mean, what about your children?
No.
How about their lives? And I'm now going to bring up something that everybody might get heated.
That's what it's here for.
Nobody mentions, I haven't heard anybody mentioning it. There were actually ANC torture camps around South Africa where they actually turned on their own people. If they heard that certain African people were going to vote for the, what was that party called? The Inkatha
AFP.
Freedom Party. Those people got tortured and murdered. It was not a white on black thing only.
Yeah.
It was a huge mess.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Really interesting.
And when the ANC came into power, they actually destroyed history records.
Yeah. Well, we all know about the burning of the schools and
Yeah.
And I think generally, you know, it's you can see a civilization in decline when a civilization stops learning. Throughout history, that's generally how it goes, and how the tyrannical people stay in power is keeping the masses ignorant.
Yeah.
Once you keep the
It
masses
helps.
ignorant of every other possibility that they could have, and you make it so as you're the only option that they do have,
Yes.
then it is you've got them under your control, and you can keep them coming back to sit by your side, and they'll be obedient
Yeah.
little whatever you need them to be.
Because there were countless necklace murders. Now let me explain for the people who don't understand that. They would take a tire, place it over a person, and they would pour in fuel
Fuel.
and actually light it on fire.
Yeah.
And weekly we'd actually hear about 2, 3, 4, 5 happening.
Yeah.
And the overseas media kept quiet about that.
Sure.
It was just, the white people are terrible towards the blacks.
Yeah.
And that was all that they focused on.
But you'll never go far enough to find
Yeah.
out who was doing the necklacing to who.
Yeah. It was just ignored.
Yeah.
So,
Anything
vote.
else?
Make a wise decision, I guess.
Yeah, make
That's
a
all I can
wise
suggest.
decision.
Yeah.
Kwanda, do you have something to add?
No, nothing. I was just glad to be included in this. There's a lot of things that I've learned. There's a lot of things that I actually need to say on my side that I need to find out about, because I actually think that I went into this week not doing the necessary research that's associated with picking the right party. I think I would have used a bit of my bias, my prejudice towards certain things to make a vote.
Assumptions.
And yeah, exactly. I think that can't work.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that this happened actually a few days before. I mean, what's it, 2 days? Like you're saying,
Yeah.
a couple of days. And then we're going to the voting polls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what I have to say. And thank you again for being on this. To all the audience of Update, we thank you again for being here.
Yeah.
I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad I could actually have a platform to speak on here as well.
Yeah, and I know that some things were spoken about that most people don't want to remember, acknowledge. And sometimes we have to look back and admit, yes, we really messed up. But it's up to us to actually move forward using our minds to actually look at things objectively.
100%.
Like, what's that thing? You keep on doing the same thing over and over, expecting
Different results. Yeah.
results.
The definition of insanity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's perfect. And you, Ian, anything in closing?
Yeah, no, that's pretty much all I want to say. But yeah, we don't realize the power that we have.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, you know, that power means and needs a few more people with a like mind that we have as best as possible, living in quote unquote democratic republics or democratic nations, and make a wise decision.